And then we have a kind of some slogans. Big one, neighborhoodization, and not merely neighborhoodization. We also tie it with smallification. Neighborhoodization and smallification. A few more such slogans and principles that we'll see later. We will begin with this neighborhoodization. Why the neighborhood focus is so important. You see, people have to relate. And what's the where should be each neighbors in the neighborhood? And people have to be organized if they have to achieve something. And what would be the first step for this people's organization? An organization that doesn't get just merely a few interested people, but involves everybody in such a way that everybody is a beneficiary and everybody is an active agent. Involve everybody, organizing everybody, and empowering everybody. If you want to have a kind of a process like that, what should be the most logical first step? And when I think of it, I say it is only neighborhood. If you are not organized at the level of your neighborhood, you cannot be organized very much effectively and very much powerfully anywhere else. So this is the first step. If you don't have the first step, you are lost all the other steps. So the first step in the ladder of people's empowerment is the neighborhood. And people don't normally appreciate that very much. For me, I was in the States, and I was trying to stay. I was in RSA around Washington Lake. And what I found there, the whole society is organized in such a way that you don't meet your neighbors. No need to meet your neighbors. The transport system is organized that way. The shops are organized that way. The entertainments are organized that way. So you don't need to meet your neighbors. So when you don't meet your neighbors, you are not organized for empowerment. You cannot that effectively be organized for empowerment somebody 10 kilometers away. So it has, the whole culture is that individual centered, don't relate, and the neighbors may be a threat. This kind of a thinking. Then what happened is Corona came. When Corona came, people began to realize once again the value of neighborhood and neighborhood-based relationships. So people speak about disaster management, disaster preparedness, and this Corona type of problems are one type of disaster. And when it comes like that, when a disaster strikes, who is the first one whom you could count upon to come and help you? It is your neighbor. And others come only later to the scene. And before that, a lot of things can happen. And if you are not organized, everything goes wrong. So when it comes to disaster preparedness, what they say, a community that is organized is best prepared for meeting a disaster, for facing or managing a disaster. When is a community best prepared? when it is organized. And when is it organized? When is it a community organized effectively? When the community has a kind of defined membership, they know who is a member and who is not a member, and with whom they are sharing the lot together. And so a kind of a membership, and then another, a kind of an accountability structure. So in this community, in this neighborhood, so and so is in charge of this. And for health, so and so. And then for any other grading, so and so. And for any education related things, so and so. Like this, you know whom to approach in this neighborhood for what and who is accountable for what. So when a community is organized like that, it is really prepared to meet any disaster. So what we do now normally, we organize the people into neighborhood communities. And these neighborhood communities size, because neighborhood can mean anything. You can say 10 kilometers area is our neighborhood. But that can, the more the small people lose their voice. The bigger a forum, only the big people can talk. The small voices get drowned. So, very vast neighborhood. You become helpless, nameless, and faceless. Nobody knows you by face, and nobody knows you by name, and you are just a number who may count or may not count. So that kind of a helpless situation you have when your neighborhood is too big. So we said, why not we go for the small-sized neighborhoods? So how small should a neighborhood be? It should be small enough that everybody is known, everybody can participate, and everybody can contribute, and everybody is recognized, taken seriously, and everybody is affirmed. So it should be small enough. Everybody feels that he is somebody in that neighborhood, that he matters in that neighborhood. This is very, very important thing, because everybody wants to matter. Everybody wants to be a kind of an important person. I want to be a person and not a non-person and not a nobody. Everybody wants to be relevant. And this feeling can be given only in a small community. Elsewhere, you become only a number, a kind of an insignificant part of the mass you crowd like that. It doesn't work. So we say it should be small enough that everybody could know one another, relate to one another, work with one another, celebrate. Then we also said it should be big enough that the community sustains. Community as an organization, as an entity sustains. This is very important too. Because suppose you have only 10 people in a group, 10 families in a group, in a neighborhood. And then two families may have visitors. And in two families, people may be sick. And two families may have gone somewhere out. And at the end, there is nobody to come for the meetings. And these meetings are supposed to be the lifeblood of any community, any organization for that matter. If you don't meet, if you don't come together, if you don't interact, then you die away as a community. The community does not sustain. So we said, why not we have a community of about 30 families? So in these 30 families, you can know one another, relate to one another, and even if half the people don't come, at least the other 15 people will be there to keep the meeting going. And when the meeting going, there is a process of getting everybody involved and integrated and then mobilized. So these meetings are the lifeblood of any organization. And we said, in principle, it should be of the size that everybody can sit around in one circle and talk without a microphone. And that's a viable, easily manageable group. And in such a community, everybody can participate. And everybody is somebody, as I mentioned earlier. So this way, we want to organize people into small-sized neighborhood communities of about 30 families. And I mentioned earlier, a community is best organized when it has defined membership and then accountability structures. Accountability structures, we can also say another word, authority structures, like authorized to do something and they are accountable to do something. So we said every such neighborhood community of about 30 families should have people responsible, like one could be a president, that when he holds the community together, and then one could be a kind of a secretary, and another one could be a kind of a treasurer, another one could be in charge of seeing to it that the community is secure, like this various responsibilities given. And then we said, okay, we can call this neighborhood community. We can also call this neighborhood parliament, because the word parliament relates to a kind of a root word, parlare, in languages like Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and so on. And French also parler. All of other languages of Latin root, like they call Latin family languages. And then the parlare means to talk. And parliament is supposed to be a place where you come and talk on matters of importance, so that you decide together and act together. And that's supposed to be a kind of a governance process. And so we said, why not we call this a neighborhood parliament? And why not we call this a neighborhood cabinet? That means instead of calling someone president, you call him prime minister of this neighborhood parliament. And instead of calling somebody the treasurer, you call that person the finance minister, and they all feel somewhat affirmed with some responsibility like that. Okay. So this way, we try to organize the community. And we also try to see that not just some people are responsible, but almost everybody is given some responsibility, some role. And what could be these roles? So when we talk about a neighborhood, we could say cleanliness of the community is one role, health of the community is another role, education of the children, caring for that, thinking about it, promoting education of the children, another could be, and then for sports there could be someone, and for environmental issues there could be somebody else, Like this, it can go on and on. So lately, United Nations came with some kind of 17 sustainable goals. And we said this also could be included, these goals, 17 sustainable development goals. That means, they have a kind of history, the 17 sustainable development goals. And see, when it was nearing the millennium, 2000 year, they said we should prepare for the millennium, 15 years of preparation. So a kind of a millennium development goals for those 15 years. Then when they came to that millennium year, they said we should continue this process. So they said we will have post-millennium goals. And after, when it came to 2015, another they said we should continue this further. So what would we have as goals? This is sustainable development goals. There should be progress, development, and the development should be sustainable for everybody in the world. And then what could these goals be? They came with various goals like no hunger, reduced poverty, quality education, well-being, gender sensitivity, peace, and like this it goes on and on for 17 goals. So we said, it's one thing to have global thinking. And Gandhiji used to say, global thinking and local action. So why not? We have a minister in each of this, the small local unit, the neighborhood unit, to represent each of these goals. So like this, we can have plenty of goals and plenty of assignments given to various people that everybody in their own way contribute both to the betterment of the neighborhood and for the betterment of the whole world, to respond to the concerns of the neighborhood and to respond to the concerns of the wider world on behalf of this neighborhood. Because you know what can happen when you are in a neighborhood, you would hear about so many problems, so many challenges in the world, like wars, violence, and then abuse of human rights. Like this, you hear a lot, and you want to do something, and you feel helpless. You don't know how to contribute. When you are organized, you can contribute. See, it is like this. I just say, we give a small exercise. And then in our groups, we say, okay, now you clap like this. Okay, 1. It doesn't make 2, slightly. Then 3, like this, and like this, and then like this. Okay. And so when you come together, you are able to make a bigger impact. So instead of each person in the neighborhood saying, oh, what can I do? I am helpless. I am only a small fellow. Instead of making people feel helpless this way, we could effectively organize them. And when they are organized, it's not one person's strength, it's not even 10 finger strength, 30 families, so many members in each family. They all together decide to contribute to solve even the problems of the wider world. So global thinking and then local action. And then we say these communities should meet together. That's very important. Without meeting, no interaction. And then without meeting, no cohesion and no we feeling and no achievement also. Okay. So they have to meet. Why not spend 1 hour a week for this? Why not? That would be ideal. Where it's not possible, they can meet less frequently. Okay, it's left to them. But the thing is to ensure that everybody in the world remains organized. And that's the idea of neighborhood. Then there are various other things we could do in the neighborhood, and that we'll take it up little later. Now I finished with that, my first part of the presentation. Anybody?
Move on to the next. You can move on to the next.
Next, okay. And then, so we spoke about one thing, neighborhoodization. Then we spoke about smallification. And then there are other things also important here. It's not enough that these communities remain isolated, just 30 families units. They should link with other similar neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods, those linking of the neighborhoods could be at various levels. I may say something now which may, frighten some of us maybe, and may appear too big, but still I shall present that dream, vision, but you don't need to do all that. You see, what we have to do is only start organizing one's own neighbor, then everything follows. So what is to speak about the possibility, only possibility we don't need to do now. Now we are interested only in the basic neighborhood community. These basic neighborhood communities can be linked at one level, say ward level. And then they could further be linked at the panchayat level. Then they could further be linked at the mandal or block level. And still next at the district level, state level, national level, international. Like this possibility is enormous. And then, to say a little more about the dream. It's only a dream, don't take it too seriously now to respond immediately into action, because too big a thing we're not now bothered about. We have to start only with the neighborhood, but still the dream. So the whole world gets organized as neighborhood parliaments, and they are linked at various levels, guided by some 5 principles. One principle is smallness, not only at the base, at every level small. And then our action at the lowest level is subsidiarity, we say. And then in a decentralized approach. And then we try to get everything done through this neighborhood. So, and that is very important. I don't go into the details. We can have a world where the whole thing is organized on the basis of neighborhood. That's a different thing later on. We will take it in another session in detail. But what we are now saying, one way of keeping alive these communities is to give them things to do. When I give them things to do, an activity to perform, a function to organize or something like that, they have to say, who are all this we? Who are all in this neighborhood? Who are all not in the neighborhood? Who all have what talents, resources to contribute? How to get them around? In all these processes, a lot of interactions take place. And the more interactions take place, the more they become cohesive and they get more glued together, and nothing can break, and they become unbreakable communities. And this is very important in building communities, to give them a kind of we feeling, a sense of owning of the community. You say, this is our community and we are the community here, and we meet things together like that. And that a kind of, we could say, a kind of collective ego like. When that collective ego, that we feeling is automatically strengthened, they will not allow anybody to bypass them. So we call this principle convergence. So this way, a community meets together and then discusses about the various issues. Each minister will alert you on some issue or other and discuss about it. They plan together, they see how best they can solve the problems, and when they grow like this, they become an empowered community. So what can be done through these communities? Possibilities are tremendous. One thing, you can ensure that the neighborhood is kept clean. Hello? You can ensure that neighborhood is kept green. I can ensure that everybody's need for education is met. And you can ensure that everybody's health needs are attended to, preventive health, curative health, rehabilitative health, promotive health, or whatnot. Every aspect of health can be attended to. And then what happens? The various things like, for example, you can have now and then what they call in the States, they call potluck. Potluck means, everybody, they gather together, everybody cooks an item and bring them together, and then they all eat together. And this they call potluck. We said every neighborhood can have this potluck. And then possibility is still tremendous. You see, there is buying and selling. I went to one village. I asked them, how much do you spend in your family for your daily expenses? And in that family village, they said some 400 rupees per day. Then I said, then in that case, in each neighborhood, you have 30 families. So 400 into 30, okay. And then you have in this village 17 such neighborhoods. And then, so in the 70, and then if it's 1 week for 1 year, you'll have to multiply into so many weeks. So how much? And then when it is for 10 years, how much? So they are calculating this is a mind-boggling amount. And then we said, you see, somebody produces and somebody is at the selling end. When you compare the rates at which the sold at the producer's level and then sold to the consumer, the gap, it is vast. It is as much as 60% normally. And then who takes all this money? The middlemen, the merchants, and what do they do? And then they become so rich that they even buy governments, and then they dominate, divide, create wars and all this. Okay. Now, instead of that, why not people themselves become the buyers and sellers? So why not we organize the what kind of bulk buying? That is, is simply put, one person takes, the list of the kind of marketing minister in the neighborhood. It takes a list of the items a particular neighborhood needs for that particular week, particular family needs, and then collates that, consolidates the list at the neighborhood level, and so many neighborhoods together. If like this, if the neighborhoods in a vast area get organized, people can have good quality products and they could have them delivered right at their doorsteps, and then they could have it at cheaper rate, and the benefits will be, the profits will be shared among them. A people's own market. You see, Gandhiji used to speak about that, a kind of Gandhian economy. Buy things from the nearest place possible. Produce things from at the nearest place possible. If each neighborhood organizes this production, buying and selling, we don't need to depend too much on this petrol and so on. A lot of expenses will be reduced. A lot of the kind of, depletion of natural energies and sources could be avoided. That's one thing. You see, I started all this in 1970s in one village. And when I went there, I was told it is a particularly notorious village for violence. Even murders take place there. And nearly 300 people from that village were involved in some criminal case or other because of these faction fights and so on in the village. Then when I went there, I was just wondering how to tackle this problem. Then I was convinced about the efficacy of groups. And groups, have a lot to add. Groups, make change communication easier. Because, when individually you meet a challenge, you would try to escape that, push it off, give under some pretext or other, and you will not make the messages seriously, change-oriented messages. But when you discuss in a group, it's not, even if one person doesn't want to see the point, others will be able to help that person. So when you want to change in a society, they say organize a lot of groups. And then, yeah, or because it's like this, they say, when a change message is not comfortable, you resort to various defense mechanisms. They call it, selective exposure. If some message appears, change-oriented message appears a little bit uncomfortable, you don't want to even listen to it. Even if you listen to it, you may not want to understand it. Even if you understand it, you may not want to remember it. Even if you remember it, you will not implement it. Even if you implement it, you will not sustain it. You may revert back. Such a lot of processes. And then various pressures also come in and then dissuade people from accepting change. For this, sociologically, what they say, if you organize people into groups and make them discuss, they will easily surmount all these defense tactics, the defense mechanisms, all these selective processes, and then withstand all these pressures, and they will be able to achieve something. This has been proved. So I was interested in group efficacy. Then I said, why not we organize these people into groups? And then I said, the group should not be for just a few people, it should be for everybody. So why not we organize on neighborhood basis? So I started organizing there neighborhood groups of about 30 families each. And each group, each neighborhood community had its own accountability structure, the president, secretary, and all that. And then they also used to meet together. And then some 5 representatives from each of these groups formed the village representative general body of the village. And then one fellow from each neighborhood began in the executive committee. That's one part of representation. Then we also said these groups could be used for various purposes. So we said a bank, like village bank. We called that term, finance support society, like that we called that. And then they are supposed to have savings and so on, and they are supposed to lend and so on. And then this was also neighborhood based. That means some people from each neighborhood should come and run this. And we had a housing society. That also was neighborhood based. And we had also a kind of a village court. We called it peace committee. And this for this village court, we said, you are going to choose judges, and tomorrow they will have to listen to your cases. And so choose properly one person who would be very, very fair. And then from each community, I got one person. We had nearly 17 such communities. And then they would form the village court. And any problem in the village, we said they should bring a kind of a written petition, and they have to pay a village court fee because to make the matter serious. And these people would sit in judgment, and then they would see that things are implemented. And as the result of all this, okay, yeah. Hello? Yeah. As a result of all this, when I left that village after nearly 5.5 years, we brought the number of people involved in criminal cases to almost zero. So much so, when anybody goes from the village to the police station for something or other, the police people would say, hey, you have village court, you go there first. And that kind of acceptability was there. And that village became a model, and many others followed. And eventually hundreds of thousands of such neighborhoods were organized in various places. Okay, so what I say now again, you don't need to organize the whole world, not the whole nation, not even your entire district. Just start organizing your neighborhood. Let each one organize his or her own neighborhood. And if this way, it's a small task. When neighborhoods are organized this way, possibilities are again tremendous. When the base is organized, the second base could be organized, that can come later. So today I am just only saying basic neighborhood communities, everybody can organize. And to organize this neighborhood is the easiest thing possible. See, you don't need to take a bus to go and organize your neighborhood. In some villages in Kerala, they were just telling us, we just clap hands and they come. They clap hands and they come. So that easy. So it is easy to organize a neighborhood. And then they ask, how do you really go about organizing? And I say, be a neighborly person first. If you are not a neighborly person, you may not succeed very much in organizing a neighborhood. So how do you become a neighborly person? You have to relate to your neighbors. You have to give a smile to your neighbors. You have to inquire about their health, their well-being. You have to express your concern for them. And so gradually, they value you. When you give love, they love you. And the whole community is a matter of love. And so, even yesterday somebody was asking, how do I organize? I said, meet them, talk to them, at least find their phone numbers and make some calls, engage them. And then more you relate to them, the more they come around, the more you can be a community player. And the word community here is important. A community In India, it has negative meanings also. You have got a caste community, religion community, like this, various base, divisive communities. What is a community? With, I mean, union, community, communion, uniting together. And this uniting together, I would like to say like this. A crowd is not a community. Because crowd is a kind of transient thing. Even it may be a people staying together in an area, they may not be a community unless they relate to one another. People who come for a meeting, they're not a community. Because once the meeting is over, they go away. And here, one requirement for this community is commitment to one another. A kind of commitment to one another, to everybody, on some kind of permanent basis. See, commitment, just you are coming together for a function. That's not, in that function you pick certain rules and norms. That's not a community. But here, community means on some kind of permanent basis, you commit to one another. So when you say, in this neighborhood, we all belong together, we are all concerned about one another, we all care for one another, we all love one another, we cry with those who cry and weep and laugh with those who laugh, we feel together, feel for one another, share with one another, celebrate together. All these things are important in a community. And another thing very important in community building is to have a vision. In any organization, that is true. In any organization, it is the aim of the group, the aim of the organization that holds the group together. When you are not clear about the mission, the organization can simply get fragmented, get dissipated. So here, each community, if it is a community, as I mentioned earlier, not just a crowd, not just a public meeting, not even a small group, but a real community means, I said, commitment to one another. That would mean that you take responsibility for one another and commit yourself. So it is here, this way they would say, no, a community sees together. That's a little expanded thing of this goal. It has a vision, common vision. You did say a community that sees together, bees together, be enough to be, that's no modification. There's no word piece together like that. But for to express that concept, they say a community that co-sees, co-bees. So that way, gradually, we collect, evolve in the community, common visions, a kind of common acceptance of certain common norms and values and priorities. This all happens along the process. So communities where we care for one another, where we relate to one another, we love one another, and those communities will be a big asset. And nobody wants to be alone. See, there was one movie I saw of a primitive age, like a group of people come together, and then one fellow tries to kill another fellow. The community gathers. They said this cannot continue. So the punishment given, nothing. you don't join us. That's the only thing. You don't join us. And these people go one way and this fellow goes another way. And that could be the biggest punishment possible, because he has no more any moorings, nothing to fall back upon, nobody to relate, and no sense of purpose, no relevance, so to say. So that's the biggest thing. And then many people in the modern world also in some way or other go through this process. So this all can be avoided. For example, let me take this. Somebody is sick, old and sick, bound to her home, bedridden, say like that. And that community is not organized. Everybody is an individual. Everybody goes, attends to only one's own business and comes. And what happens? This person will die out of loneliness. She will get more and more sick, sad, irrelevant, with no meaning like that. And suppose that community is organized, 30 people in neighborhood. And there is somebody in charge of old age people care, the minister for senior people. And that person keeps an alert eye on these helpless seniors. And that says, we have to organize something. Then you will bring the matter to the neighborhood. See, there is a problem. Can we take turns in going and spending some time with that person? Say, can our youngsters do some entertainment for them? Such a lot of things can be organized. Like this, so many things go unattended. So many needs go unattended. So many grievances remain unaddressed when the community is not organized. It may be organized as a nation, but it's too big. It may be organized as a state, too big. It may be organized as a district or even as a panchayat, but it must be organized as a small-sized community. Then only people's needs will be known, they will get attached. So along this pattern, something interesting is happening in our district of Kanyakumari. You know, they said the COVID is coming down and no death now, and only 1 or 2 cases or something like that, they say. Okay. And then what they did here, our district disaster management committee, they went for what they call convergent community action. That means the idea is like this. At every level, all the people involved should come together, discuss together, plan together, and act together. At all levels. That means neighborhood, ward, panchayat, mandal, district, like that. At every level, all people involved means it could be government people, it could be non-governmental organizations, it could be individuals interested, various type of people, anybody with some way or other associated with that concern. They come together. So for this, what they have done in the district, under each panchayat, they have created a ward committee, ward sabha. Below Grama Sabha, there is now coming a ward sabha. And in this ward sabha, they said, from every unit of about 30 families, one man and one woman should be represented in the ward sabha. So anything needed, anything that needs to be given attention, immediately it gets attention. In our neighborhood, 30 families, this is happening. Then immediately the message comes to the various levels. So no problem goes unattended and nobody's needs go unmet. So this kind of a system they are organizing. And Similar systems can be organized for various things. You may have heard about one program in Kerala. They call it Kudumba Shri. And this Kudumba Shri, they have 300,000 such neighborhoods of poor women. And then what happens? Initially, when they start, is it possible? Will it work? And then you know what happened? Now, these poor women's neighborhood groups, they handle a finance bigger than that of any corporate house in the state, a bigger financial outlay than any other corporate house in the state. So financially, the small, helpless, isolated women, when coming together in that neighborhood basis, they get empowered and become stronger than any corporate house in the state financially. And then politically also something happened. These people, the Kerala government did something interesting. They began to depute some responsibilities to these groups. And so they had to work along with the local governments institution like panchayats. And then such a lot of things delegated to them, challenges given to them. So they have to come together, work together, discuss together, plan together. Along all these processes, they learned the governance game. So elsewhere also we have women representatives. But in Kerala, the women representatives are women on their own right because they have gone through the process of deciding together and leading together. And last few elections, because of this process that was initiated in the neighborhoods, more women got elected to the panchayats than men. And then, as I said, women leaders on their own right. So a lot of things possible. In Kerala, they went for, again, the panchayat system itself now starts from this neighborhood sabhas. Earlier I spoke about neighborhood groups of poor women, now also neighborhood sabhas, including all in the neighborhood, whether poor or men or women, everybody. So neighborhood sabhas, and neighborhood sabhas then come under ward sabhas, and then they link to the panchayat. So this structure, Kerala government is officially promoting, and they have brought out some 6 small-sized volume, only 6 volumes. I would say 6 booklets and then giving detailed guidance on the roles and responsibilities and the agenda that could be at the neighborhood level, ward level, and panchayat level. And that's a big initiative. And such initiatives should be started everywhere. And for that, we don't need to wait for anybody. And as I said earlier, don't go anywhere else. Go only to your neighborhood. Relate only to your neighbors. Of only 30 families, talk to them, plan with them, create a viable structure, accountability structure, so that every person in the neighborhood feels he or she belongs and is empowered, and every need is met and every problem is solved, leading to social, economic, political empowerment and growth and peace. So I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Edwin.